Postpartum is hard enough, but especially if you're having neurological issues and you don't have support. Today's story is about a mom who was so stuck in fight or flight that she couldn't sleep and would wake up feeling choked. It's a great story about her whole family, so I'm excited to share it with you. But we're also going to get into today's guest's story, what she wished she would have, and how then she is creating it for other moms. Hi, I'm Jenna Quentin, founder of Adjust Your Media and host of What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate podcast. And we're also going to get into some ways that she's building this community and doing it with some fun stuff like workshops. So let's listen to this episode. Today on What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate is Dr. Sarah Brauer. She is a chiropractor in Texas at Rooted Wellness Chiropractic. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. So excited.
Yeah, so I always ask people, I have asked on Facebook lately, does anybody have any stories? And so I was grateful that you said, I do. So whose life improved with chiropractic care?
Okay, so I have a great story of a mom who actually came into our practice, which is interesting because we're mostly pediatrics here. I usually joke with my families that we start with kids and then they bring their parents, right?
Yeah.
So this mom actually in particular sought us out on her own first though. And eventually, part of the end of the story, I guess I'm skipping ahead, is that her whole family is now under care, which is amazing. But it all started with this mom. So she was in a period of postpartum. She had just had her baby and she had had a little bit of a traumatic end of pregnancy with some scares with preeclampsia and really not feeling well. Her biggest issue, honestly, was that she was not able to sleep. I'm not talking about the regular, like we have a newborn or late in pregnancy, it's hard to sleep. She wasn't sleeping at all. She would fall asleep and feel like she was being strangled and wake up in like this startled fight or flight. It was happening 8-10 times a night. So was not getting good sleep, really struggling. She had 2 toddlers at home as well. And it was just really rough go. And she, by the grace of God and the universe, found us on Instagram, which was, like I said, we're pediatric. And so a lot of what we are marketing is towards pediatrics, right? Towards kiddos and how we help kiddos through struggles. But this mom really heard our message about nervous system focused care and really wanted to see if that could help her somehow. She tells this story better than I do, and she actually told it at our latest workshop a couple weeks ago and just had the whole room, sniffling and tearing because her story is so profound. But she was hospitalized 5 days postpartum with what they called seizure level high blood pressure and put on medication, and she didn't want to be on medication and she didn't want to be away from her kids and especially the newborn. And just, the way she describes it, it's like, this is not the postpartum journey I wanted with my third kid, right? And came home from the hospital and literally she put her hospital bag down and picked up the phone and called me at the office. And she's like, I don't know if you can help me, but I need something. And I know that you can help calm the nervous system. And, she had watched a lot of our stuff online. And I said, yeah, we don't cure anything, but we can help remove the interference in your nervous system so that your body can heal itself, because that's what it's supposed to do, right? And that's what I told her on the phone. And she was like, I'm down. When can you get me in, right? So she was in the next day. And, there were little things that first day, as a new mom going through postpartum stuff, you're going to expect some of these moms are struggling anyways to begin with, right? But this mom you could tell she was having a rough time. And we did our scans. We used the Insight scans. We did our scans and had our day 2. And I presented her with a care plan that was probably longer than she thought it was going to be because it takes some time to unwind the nervous system, but she was all in. She's like, I need help and I need to feel better. And 2 weeks into her care, she came in the door and both my assistant and I looked at each other like, she looks so different. Like she was shining, she was smiling, she was interacting with her newborn. It was just such an amazing difference right away. 2 weeks is nothing. And at that point, she said she had stopped taking her blood pressure medication. She didn't need it anymore. She was still monitoring and going back and forth with her MD who had prescribed, of course, because that was one of her goals. She wanted to get off that medication. So she had gotten off the medication. She was sleeping as much as a newborn lets you sleep, but sleeping, between waking for feeding, she was getting some real sleep. She wasn't in this panic anymore. And it was just such an amazing transformation for her and her kids. The whole time, every time she would come in, she would be like, I really need to get my kids checked. I really need to get my kids checked. And I'm like, yeah, we're ready for you when you're ready, just take your time. And eventually she did get all 3 of her kids under care. And this is a funny part of the story, actually. So her name is Keisha. So the very first day that Keisha came in, she had her husband with her to help with the newborn. And her husband sat in the corner, arms folded, scowl on his face. I mean, just wanted none of it. And when she signed up for care and signed her entire care plan package, he looked at her and said, are you sure this is what you want to spend your money on? Just very discouraging. And she said yes. And in that moment, I was so proud of her for taking care of herself. But I also was like, okay, challenge accepted, Dad. Challenge accepted, right? So the day that his kids, his last 2, the oldest 2 got scanned, was probably 6 to 8 weeks into Keisha's care. So Keisha was still on restorative care as well. And the day the kids got scanned, I kind of gave the dad a hard time. I said, hey, Vince, you're next. When are you signing up? And he goes, fine, put me on the schedule. And now he gets adjusted as well and raves about it. I mean, he just comes in with a smile on his face and he's joking with the staff. And, it's such a turnaround for the whole family to be under neurologically focused chiropractic care where everybody's feeling better, because we all co-regulate with our family members too. So that whole family has now gotten a little bit better regulated. So
I love all of this. There's so many cool things. I want to start with the fact that some people could say, well, there's a placebo. She wanted it to work,
Sure.
And some people could say, maybe she would have gotten over it. And that is where it's so cool that, like on the scans and things that you say, we're doing these scans, I can see where, and you can show them visually. Here's where your heart rate variability, here's where your EMG, and it's even color coded, which, for everybody who's visual more than numbers, where you can say green is good, yellow is we're struggling, red is there's inflammation, there's dysfunction, there's reduced nerve flow.
Yeah.
So even so validating, I think, especially as women, to say, I see you. You're not crazy.
Yes.
Yeah. It's in your nervous system.
Yep.
And I've pinpointed where, and I'm going to help you.
Yep. And it was really cool to see that in her scans too. And like you said, so validating for her as a mom on her own scans, of course, to see, the first scan, we looked at it and we were like, girl, you not only are stuck in fight or flight, but you're like in the exhausted mode. You followed the sympathetic cliff, as we say, right? So stuck in fight or flight for so long that we are now exhausted. We need to wake things up, get the nervous system reactivated, and of course help stimulate that parasympathetic nervous system and that information to the brain so that we're having correct brain output, right? If we don't get good sensory input, we don't get good brain output, like that heart rate and the high blood pressure she was experiencing. So all of that was so validating for her. And then when we scanned her kids, who, she has a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old in addition to the newborn, and they had minor struggles, but kind of they weren't like the perfect storm kiddos with ADHD and autism diagnoses and, not speaking and not potty training. Like they were just like the 2-year-old hadn't potty trained yet. And she was having a little trouble talking. And the older one was having a little bit trouble with speech, and school was starting to talk about speech therapy, And then when I was able to show them the scans and be like, look, this is where the dysfunction is. And that's where the nerves come out that operate executive functioning, or this is where the nerves that operate, the lower GI tract and the sensory information from the bladder. So if we're having dysfunction in this area, little girl can't tell you when she's got to go because she's not really feeling it yet, that kind of stuff. So the scans, you're right, are hands down such a good tool for us to have to really show objective change and not just the subjective, are we feeling better? Are we sleeping better? Right?
Yeah. I love that. I love too that like what you said about all of your messaging, because that's the secret sauce really, where someone can window shop and say, I can see myself there. And then, like you said, that you make sure that there's so much ownership of, she said, yes, this is what I want to do, to take ownership of her health.
Yeah.
For her whole family.
Yeah.
That's such a good part of messaging. Like, I think sometimes we can get caught up in the, like, what do people want to hear online? Or we can get really into like long tail keywords, and we're going to look up and research our long tail keywords and things. But the simple fact of the matter is, there's a mom who's struggling. Are we going to show up for her where she's looking for us, which is she was in that hospital, probably alone on her phone.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, you maybe can't put a poster or a brochure in the hospital, but you can show up for her on her phone, which is in her hand, which she made sure she had with her. So that's a really beautiful thing. I do want to ask about your workshops. So tell us about why you do workshops and how you do those.
So the why behind it is kind of part of my bigger dream, my long range and bigger dream, which is I envision a community whereby families can come together, share knowledge, share experiences, and, healthcare providers can come together and share knowledge and share experiences. So it's kind of the bigger community picture. Our workshops are fun. They're definitely a learning event, but they are fun. We provide food, we provide beverages. The playroom is always open if you have to bring your kiddos. We do one workshop per quarter. We try to do adults only for that one, but most of them are the kids are invited. It's a family affair, and we fill it up here. So our capacity here is pretty low. We're in a small space right now, but we had standing room only the last 2 workshops that we've had.
Wow. Love it. So I know 2020 and all of that kind of slowed down so many in-person events for people. So what are some things that you've done to just fill up the room to tell people this is here and we're doing this and it's amazing?
Yeah, well, some of it is just that I talk about it on social media, right? So posts with graphics, but I also will go live. I'll usually do a live Q&A the week before or the week of, earlier in the week. And, sometimes nobody shows up for those things online and we just go through and answer FAQs. What are the frequently asked questions? We talk about, but they do eventually get watched. And so I think that helps bring some of the magnetism, right? The other thing that I do is that I always have at least one basket of goodies that we're going to raffle off, and you have to be present to win. Last time we actually did 2 because it was a mom and baby workshop, and so we did one for mom and one for baby, and I put high quality stuff that I wish I had when I was a mom or that I want every family to have, right? So something like the Whole Brain Child book. We've done Chiro clickers before. We've done in the baskets. I have a local lady that makes a frankincense infused homemade tallow lotion, so we give that away. I mean, these are great giveaways. It's not just cheapy stuff, right?
Sure.
So we do that and we advertise that and we have it out in our office for 2 weeks before the event, sitting on the counter, and people come up and ask, oh, what is this? And we're like, well, you got to be here in a couple of weeks. We have this workshop, So it kind of gets the excitement going for it, I think, too.
I love that. And I just think that there are not enough fun events for moms. I was talking about the Wichita Moms blog that I've been part of, and they used to do a Halloween party where moms dressed up, and it was like those fun things where it's like, when do moms get together and are able to talk about something like their birth stories? Because I think pretty much most moms, whether they had a positive experience or a traumatic experience, a lot of us like to talk about it. And it's not always like dinner party conversation. So to open a space where it's like, oh, you're going to have a night out and you're going to be able to talk and share, like you said, knowledge and experiences is a really valuable thing. And yeah, moms don't always have enough fun, especially if you have little ones. Like right now, my youngest is 7. So I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of different experiences, but especially moms of littles to be like, oh, bring them. Like that's such a valuable thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't worry about childcare, just bring them. And we make sure that our playroom is fully stocked. We also have a fully stocked changing area. So we tell moms of newborns, you don't even have to bring in your diaper bag. I mean, unless they have a blowout, I don't have clothes, but we have the wipes and the diapers of all sizes and all the things that they could need. So we try to make it so when you're in here, you're in your second home, right? And that's all the time, not just in workshops, but it definitely helps the workshops for sure.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a little bit of what you would have wanted. So what is your story? I love that that is part of your why and your driving force. What's your story of what you would have wanted?
Yeah, definitely like a lot of moms. I didn't have a super traumatic birth experience, but there are things that I look back on and I'm like, man, I wish that I had better support in these areas. I had with my first, who is turning 22 and graduating college next month. So yeah, this was a long time ago, but with my first, I had wanted to have a home birth. But his father was totally not down for that at all. So we were like, okay, well, we're going to do the Bradley classes and we're going to write a birth plan. We'll do a hospital birth, but we're going to make sure that we do as much as possible to remove interventions and avoid interventions that are unnecessary and that kind of thing. Well, the day came and the doc from my group that was on call was the only doc I had not met. He was the only male doctor in the practice, and he completely bullied me throughout my entire labor. And so I just had this experience that was like ick, and I wish that I had had the support early on to know and not convince, but assure my husband that a home birth or an out of hospital birth would have been a safe option. I feel like that would have been a difference for me. And then just mothering, these days we don't live in our villages anymore, right? And I was away from family, going through all these things. We had moved for the father of my children's job. And so we had moved out of state, and it was just like you're parenting on an island. And sometimes you need the community of moms who can be like, hey, that I went through that too. And here's what you can try and here's what you can do. Or just like, let me come over and watch your kid for an hour while you shower and nap, right? Like those little things. And so that's kind of the community I want to build here. I had the experience just the other day where I overheard two families that met here in the office. Mom was saying, oh, my son is always excited when her kids are going to be here. And I was like, that's so cool. Maybe we need to make sure your appointments are the same. And she goes, no, don't worry about it. We're going to meet up outside of here too. So now we've got park dates, of families from here. So that's kind of the community that I always wished that I had had. Wishing that I had had support is what led me to want to support other moms. So about the time that my first was 2 and I was pregnant with my second, I started attending a Leche League group when Leche League was still very active. I feel like it died now, but I started attending a group, and long story short, I ended up becoming a Leche League leader. And then we moved overseas. I lived in Saudi Arabia for 3 years. And before we moved, about a year before we moved, I was like, I want to do something more. And so I went and became an IBCLC, a board certified lactation consultant. And I was one of the few, there were only 3 in the entire country of Saudi Arabia at the time. And I started the first bilingual Leche League group in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And so was able to help a lot of moms there. And as my kids got older, I have 4 boys, by the way. So by the time my kids were a little bit older, I went through a divorce, unfortunately, with their father, but I knew that I wanted to do something more with my career. And I had always had this big dream to have like a mom and baby holistic health center that included midwives, lactation consultants, and, whatever else we could have. And I believe that I was guided by God or the universe or whatever, but to take the chiropractic route, because as a mom of 4 boys, single mom of 4 boys, going through a divorce, like it doesn't make any logical sense to go to chiropractic school at that moment.
Right.
But I did. And I made it through and, graduated with flying colors, didn't have to take time off or anything. And so that it was just, I felt very, very blessed to be guided down that right path that was perfect for me. Just the hands-on healing, the speaking to the nervous system, all of these things are they just speak so truly to who I am and the way that I would support moms. So yeah, that's kind of the quick rundown of my whole story of how I got here.
I love that. That is so wonderful to be able to also share that with other moms, that, each sacred experience along the way, that you can have so much empathy in whatever they're going through to say, yes, this is hard, and maybe I don't know you're hard, but I know hard. And to transform that into how you're going to serve others and how you're going to bring that into your practice. That's so cool. What a cool thing too. I have 3 boys and a girl. So what a cool thing too for young men to see their mom as a force of nature, even academically. That is something where it's like homework. I'm not scared of that.
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to be the thing that holds me back from my big why of who I want to serve and how.
Yeah.
From this big vision.
Yeah. And I learned from a mentor very early on in chiropractic school, actually, like the way that we speak always matters, right? But the way that we speak about what we do with our own families and with our children is huge, right? And so I've always talked to my children about, not that I'm going to work, but I'm going to serve or I'm going to help families. Because sometimes, yeah, it does happen that I can't make a soccer game, right?
Right.
Because I'm here at the office. And so, but I'm telling them, like I get to help these families and then, I'll be there for the next game or I'll, whatever. So trying to make sure to impress upon them that what I'm doing is more than a job, right? And I think at their ages now, they really start to understand. My 16-year-old works in the office sometimes, so he comes in and does some janitorial services right now. Really, I'd love to have him doing more, and just spending time in the office, he's like, wow, this is really cool what you get to do, Mom. And when I make videos and he overhears me, he's like, wow, Mom, that was really cool. Like you really, so yeah.
Yes. It's an amazing thing to have that element in your practice where you're serving families and that serves your family and then your family can serve their family. It's part of that community building that you're talking about. I feel like there's so many different ways we could keep talking about all of this, because even the fact that you helped moms internationally, I feel like gives you another layer of that knowledge and experience that you want to share to be able to connect with moms, even if it's like we don't have some things in common.
Yeah. Right.
You know how to work with that.
Well, we share motherhood, right? Motherhood is universal. So that's the beautiful thing about being able to help moms from all walks of life is it really is, motherhood is universal. And experiences are not always the same, but there are parts of being a mom that are absolutely universal to the human experience. And so tapping into that is really amazing. I've actually spent a lot of time overseas in my life. So I spent part of my college overseas and stuff like that. So I have had various experiences in various places, and I feel like that does help to give me a good understanding of people coming from different backgrounds and having different experiences and different expectations sometimes in motherhood. So there's some moms that do have a lot of support because they couldn't live any other way, right? And which is beautiful. And then there's moms that have had an experience similar to mine, where mothering out on an island and have to create that village where we need it, right?
Yes. We keep coming back to the nervous system and the fact that you are neurologically focused, and to say, like, underneath our backgrounds and our experiences and our expectations, that you understand how the nervous system functions. And yes, our nervous systems are each going to express life differently, but there's also similarities there in how we're going to function.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that's getting down to the root cause and helping people to understand their own nervous systems is a huge blessing of what I get to do here. I just think it's so amazing to have people see the connection between the scans and the actual subjective progress that they may be seeing in their kiddos or themselves. So, looking at those scans and being like, oh, wow, like something is starting to change in thermal scan, for example, or the EMG, we're seeing more organization, right? The pattern is looking different. The symmetry looks better. And then they're like, well, yeah, actually my kid's been sleeping better, or they sit still longer. And it's like, yeah, these things show up, right? So, and like you said, those things are universal to the human experience. So it's amazing to be able to tap into that as chiropractors, right?
Yes. Well, and even the things that, we don't really realize are a sympathetic response. And from your global experience, to be able to say, I recognize this as a pattern of dysfunction. Maybe you haven't quite realized that, but this freezing or fawning even, like, oh yes, the people pleasing side of things, you're trying to cope, like you're really stressed out and trying to survive. And I think women especially, we do that. But even I got some milk from the dairy, like I do each Friday, and put it in my glass jar and picked it up, and the glass jar broke. So the panic of literally crying over spilled milk, there's milk everywhere. And my daughter and I are standing there, and we froze for a solid 10 seconds too long. And then I was like, we need towels.
Yes.
Like, we were just like,
what do we do?
Horrified. What have we done?
Right. Yeah.
But even recognizing like things like that, where the time that I do freeze in a panic, like, oh, I'm a little stressed out. Or even the things that, we don't always connect to, I'm a little stressed out, like yeast infections. Like, boy, I've got too much going on. Even babies with yeast infections, chronic yeast infections, where you're like, that would seem to have nothing to do with the spine.
Yeah.
That would seem to have nothing to do with stress levels.
Sure.
But boy, howdy, do I know.
Yes.
It's connected.
Yes. Absolutely.
So being able to help people to connect all of those dots in their experience subjectively and objectively is really amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've worked so long with the mom-baby dyad that I love the yeast infection example, because I tell moms all the time, because a lot of my patients come in through referrals from the lactation consultants that I work with in the community. And a lot of them don't really understand why they've been referred to me sometimes when they first come in, like, well, I mean, I know that they're having trouble breastfeeding, but like, how is this all related? Why are you talking about sympathetic nervous system and, breastfeeding, again, a human experience, right? And a cross-cultural experience. Breastfeeding is a vital sign. If a baby is born and not thriving at the breast, then it's a sign that there's something else going on, right? And we need to dig deeper and find out, why is this kiddo stuck in fight or flight? How deep is that subluxation? Because believe it or not, even in newborns, we find patterns that are really deep and stuck. So yeah, but the scans tell all, right? We're able to see that in the scans instead of just having a subjective view. But yeah, I love being able to do what we do. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I know we could keep talking all day and you probably have dozens more stories, but I'm going to put some links in the show notes where people can connect with you and learn more. But thank you so much for sharing today. And thanks too for all that you do. And I look forward to seeing, how your community grows.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Jenna. I really appreciate it. It was fun.